going. All right. So I am recording now, just so everybody's clear. Just want to be clear about that. Okay. Friends, we're so glad that you're here tonight. I am thrilled to have, well, he's my buddy now. We've known each other quite a bit now, even though we've never met in person. Jeff and I was drawn to Jeff's energy immediately when I met him. He's a guy that gives to the world, is looking to help the world in any way possible. He's a coach, and I'm excited to hear about the lessons he's learned through his coaching experiences. But he's far more than that. He's also a father, a huge family man, huge support system for his family. He's a podcaster as well. He's an author. He's a speaker. He's a guy that does a lot. And he also has the old 1950s tattoo fillers with the dots that not many people do anymore. So he's like my tattoo soul brother. But friends, I'd like to introduce to you my dear friend, Mr. Jeff Forrester. Jeff, thanks for being here, brother.
I'm going to have to keep Phil in my pocket so he can introduce me every time I walk into a room. That was unbelievable. So thank you. I'm humbled by that, and a little, I don't know if you can see if my cheeks are a little red, but thank you. Thank you. And nice to see everybody. I've seen a lot of you on Instagram already, which is cool to see you in life, I guess, in real virtual life, and not just as a little heart or a thumbs up or a like. But I do appreciate all of those, because like in your job, it can be just thankless so many times where you just don't know if the things that you're putting out there resonates, but there's that silent majority that really receives the impact that are in the shadows. And that's why we do what we do. So a little bit more about me. So again, my name's Jeff Forrester. I live in Orlando, Florida. So right through that window, the Magic Kingdom is less than a mile away. So the fireworks were just going off. So I get to hear those every single night. And we get to hear the train whistle, depending on which way the wind blows and all that fun stuff. But we have been in Orlando for 14 years. And my wife and I, Tammy, we've been married 18 years. And what's really cool is knowing around what you guys do is she just started her full-time position as an elementary school PE teacher. And so she had gone, that was her whole schooling was PE, and she had always coached and did PE in high school. And so she made the decision she was ready to go back and try her hand out. So last year she was a PE para at a different school, and then an opportunity came up so she could be a full-time teacher. So she's trying to get back into the swing of things, and it's like you got to get in shape to be a teacher with all this stuff that's going on mentally and physically. I have a son who is 16. His name's Deuce. He's a high school football player. And then my daughter, Lorelai, is 14, and she's a club volleyball player. And like Phil said, they are my everything on this earth, and they are wonderful. And I'm just blessed to be able to spend so much time with them and to try to do everything I can to shape them into good humans, like Phil's goal and each one of your goals is as well. And so I was in the corporate world for 22 years and different roles of leadership, marketing, in pharmaceuticals and healthcare sales. And in 2021, I was laid off for the last time. And so just made that decision then that I just really wanted to see what else was out there. And so through a lot of prayer and just soul searching, decided to venture on this adventure of becoming a coach and just utilizing a lot of the skills that I'd learned over my time in corporate America, and knowing that those things do transfer really, really well to everyday life. And they had helped me. And I've always been a student of learning and trying to be better and help other people be better as well. And so my wife and I made that decision. And so here I sit. It is not easy. And it has definitely been really challenging, and more challenging than I thought it would be. But through it, I've learned a lot more about myself. I've been able to understand a little bit more about people and know that it's just a process, just like anything in life. And so through that, I received a mental performance coaching certification through Brian Cain. So if you've not heard of Brian Cain, I highly recommend. His newsletters are great. He doesn't sell. He just provides a ton of value. He's got short little 2-3 minute podcast every day. So he's really, really good. And in that, just started to bring a few things to the light for me. And that was around just being self-aware and awareness. And that's where the recognize, release, and refocus comes from. And something happened today that really is unfortunate, but great for the topic that we have tonight. So, a little bit, my son's school, it was opened. This is the 8th year, and it didn't have its football stadium on campus because it backed up to a neighborhood. And when they first built it, the neighborhood complained and never wanted to have a football stadium on campus. So they had to go 2 miles, mile and a half down the road. So all of their home games were still places where they had to travel on a bus. Well, gratefully, last year it was approved to build a campus on a stadium on campus. And so the first game was supposed to be Friday night. And we just got an email this afternoon that they didn't pass inspection and didn't get the certificate of occupancy for Friday. So everything was planned. The guys were super excited to be able to play on campus. The school was excited. So now they have to drive 20 minutes to another school stadium to play. And you want to talk about massive disappointment. And it hit me first, fortunately. So I was able to process before my son got home because I had to be the strong one, right? And I had to recognize what was going on. And that's where a lot of that is encouraging for us as parents and as educators and just humans, is we have to recognize our challenges and why do we feel the way we feel? Why are we being impacted the way we're being impacted? Because if we're not looking at that, we don't know how to process and how to get past that and get over that. And then you had to figure out, okay, how am I going to release and how am I going to refocus? And so the first part of that process around recognize is I like to talk about, there's 3 sections. So we can do it a couple of different ways. So one, I'll start with the basics, and then the step up is more descriptive, which is great for students and young people and great for all of us to have the visual. And so you can think about, as we're talking about a traffic light, and about when you're doing great, you're in the green. When you're starting to struggle, you're in the yellow. And when you're just all the way done, you're in the red. And so what you want to look at is first and foremost of how you operate and how you show up in the green. And you want to look at 3 areas. And so that's a BFS. So you want to look at your body language, your focus, and your self-talk. So for me, my body language, when I read that email, my shoulders slumped, my head was down. I was completely disgusted. There's no question if somebody walked in, they would say, "What's wrong?" And then the self-talk started about how aggravated I was. How did they let this happen? They've known about this for so long. Why didn't they do a pre-inspection? And then my imagination starts going wild about how the boys are going to feel and what are they going to do? And, they're going to, this is going to be hard for them to get up and excited for the game. So the self-talk was just going 90 to nothing. And my focus was hyper focused solely on the negative for several minutes. And so I was not in the green. So when I'm in the green, my shoulders are back, my head's tall, I've got a bright smile on my face, my eyes are bigger. And so I needed to realize that I'm not doing that, I'm doing this. And that's where recognizing those things. And as educators, there's no question you know your students well. You know when something's not right. You know when something's bothering them. That's that tell of, are they in the yellow or are they in the red? Or when somebody walks in, you know if they're in the green. They come in, they're bubbly, they're bright, they got a bounce in their step. And so recognizing body language is really important. And if people don't know themselves, you have to help them. And so a lot of young people are challenged with what their body language is, but they can describe what does green light body language look like? What is yellow light and red light? And just by them becoming aware of that is helpful. And then by talking through that, then now you have some signs that you can say, hey, looks like you're going into the yellow. How you doing? And then recognizing the focus. Again, you could probably tell when you have a student that's their focus is not where it normally is. They're fading, they're just really distracted, of how to get them back into the green before they go completely red and they're just completely disengaged. And then the self talk is figuring out and asking them is like, hey, when things are great, what do you say to yourself? Most of them have no clue. Like they haven't thought through that part. But when you say, what do you say to yourself when things are going bad? They're quick to describe that, just like we are. We're able to, like I said, just very easily describe everything that I was saying to myself, manufactured or not. And so once you are able to recognize, that's the key, and having them talk through that and understand that this is going to be a process, because like anything, this is a skill that you have. So before I go into the release and the refocus, what kind of questions does anyone have around self-awareness and the recognized stage?
So, Jeff, I just want to point out when going through this, whether this is with yourself or with a young adult or with a coworker, with a significant other, do you feel like once you do it with yourself, are you more aware of others as well? So, like once I start focusing on my body language, am I more likely to notice that on other people too?
Oh, for sure. It's just like if you've ever done a disc profile test, or you've done any personality test. Once you do that, you're at a heightened stage of, okay, I know me. Now I'm looking at all these different people and where they're at. And it's that red thread. You're just trying to look for what is that common thing that's there. And as educators, you guys, when you go into the classroom, it's important to be greenlit, whether it's fake or it's real, that you have to make sure, because if we don't show up in the green, everybody else, we're going to bring them into whatever color that we're in. And that's why, Trish, when you were talking about games and having fun, you can manufacture some fun to immediately just make yourself feel better, because you've got endorphins and you got serotonin and dopamine. Everything's starting to move because you're just getting up and moving around. So that's important.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay. Oh, go ahead.
Some of this sounds a little like NLP. What was neuro-linguistic programming part of this program that you did where you got certified?
Yeah, loose, but it wasn't where you could say that you're NLP certified. But all of this is just like he goes through the program, and one of the other things that I like that is attached to the recognize, release, and refocus is around signs of success. And so it's like I'm a big fan of sticky notes. I've got sticky notes everywhere with positive affirmations. I start the day with positive affirmations. And so all of that stuff, like in NLP, is you can program yourself into a better life. And I'm proof of it. So it's something that if you have a process and you're dedicated to it, that's why I say it's a skill versus just being like, nobody's natural at writing sticky notes and putting it on their mirror. It's something you have to be intentional and have the discipline to do that.
I think that self-talk part you brought up, I went blank. I don't know what I say when things are going well. It's almost like I only notice when things are not going well that my mind starts spinning. So it was a great self-reflection for me to just like, man, maybe I should pause and smell the roses, for lack of a better phrase. Like maybe I should think about, man, this is going really great, a great day. I think I'm natural with like my gratitude in the morning, so I feel like that naturally maybe feeds that self-talk before I really get going. But that was a really great point, that I don't really know what I think about when my class is going well, or when my family's thriving and we're eating dinner together and laughing. I'm just enjoying it, but I never thought about like, what am I thinking? But now I think metacognitively, right? Now I'm going to think about it next time. So just planting that seed, I really appreciate. I think it's good for us to focus on when it is going good. What are we saying? And maybe we can bring that forward more when things are in the yellow or the red. So I love that you brought that up.
And I
And-
just
Yeah, I
wanted to
love
jump
that
in.
too. 'Cause-
Ooh,
oh,
sorry,
go
guys.
ahead.
I was just gonna say, we educators need to model it for kids, that when things go well, we say it. So I have a co-teacher in the room, and today I said, "Oh my goodness, Mrs. Wilson, do you realize all the good things that are happening right now and how are we feeling?" We actually brought it up, and when the kids hear it, then they're even more so stepping up to the plate because we called it out. So sometimes it's a fake it till you make it, like, "Oh, this is going great," not so great, but I don't tell them that. But it's like, we need to model it for them. Why? Because we are so quick to use words to attack ourselves. I would never use those words with anybody else. But if you guys could hop into my mind, it can get terrible. It's awful, and we all do it. You know, thank you for bringing that up.
Yes. And I work with a lot of student athletes. And so the connection point with young people is find something that they have success in and ask them when things go well, what is usually the first thing that you say? So, like, Phil, when you taste that cake, that first slice, not all nailed it, but when you actually had one in your own kitchen, like what are some of the things that you say like when things just went really, really well?
Yeah, I'm usually like, damn, this is good.
Yeah, I mean that's your affirmation, that's your self-talk. And with athletes it's let's go, it's there could be expletives that are involved, it's whatever makes them recharge. And you want anybody that you're talking to when they're recognizing that they anchor everything in the green. They have to remember and know what it feels like when you're not in the green, and they've got to get back to that because so often we allow that one moment to turn into two moments. And then after it goes two or three times, then everything just falls apart. And then now we start to believe the self-talk. See, I told you, why did we shouldn't even have tried to do this. But hey, it's that fixed versus growth mindset conversation. And that's why the recognized stage is the most difficult because it takes so much self-reflection and awareness and the willingness to address it. And Rosalie, like you said, is that it 100% is fake it till you make it. Because if you allow your mind to take over, it will win because it's that subconscious that is a battle. And so I don't know if any of you are familiar with Jesse Itzler. I don't know if you've heard of him. So he's the husband of Sarah Blakely that invented Spanx. Like most people know who she is more than they know he is, but he's founded Marquis Jets and sold that to Warren Buffett. And then he brought Zika water over to Coke. And so he's done all these things. So he's worth a lot of money as well. But he talks about is that you just don't say things when you're tired. You don't say that you're tired. And and then another friend of mine, he's a former Navy SEAL, Chad Wright. He says, don't give your pain a voice. So if you're tired, don't say that you're tired out loud. Say, I never get tired. Because once you say it, then you hear it, and then you start to fall into that pattern. I did another coaching certification a while back through John Maxwell, and they talked about Dr. Herman Fleet, and he created the stick man. I don't know if you've heard of that reference, but it's the basics of that. Whatever you hear is your conscious mind programs your subconscious, which impacts your actions and impacts your results. So it's that cycle. So you have to make sure that your conscious mind, the fake it till you make it, is programming the subconscious to kick the negativity out. So back to that NLP process of you've got to get it out of there and you have to talk it out of there. And another guy that yes, I could do hard things 100% is a great thing to say. And I was going to say with David Goggins, if you've heard of him, is that he's like, hey, brain, I win. Because the brain's going to tell you, I don't want to go run. I don't want to go do this. I don't want to Like, I want that cookie, but you have to challenge it and say, I'm going to win. And it feels good. And that's where, again, when you have young people that wanted to do something that they know they shouldn't have done, and they did it anyway, and they didn't do it, or they did something that they knew, like homework, is remind them is like, good job. I know you didn't want to do that. Just get it started, because then procrastination is a habit. So that's the recognized part of it. This is my favorite part. I could go for hours on this.
Oh, I love this. And I know that we're going to go from recognize to release to refocus.
Yes.
For that, though, talking about the power of the brain, me being a science background, I'm always super skeptical at first about the things I hear until I like get some science backing. But it's phenomenal what the brain can do physically to the body, even with just like placebo tests, where people have been rubbed with completely normal leaves, but have been told that it's poison ivy. And then like 40% of them break out with a rash, even though it wasn't poison ivy, or that people have been given placebo pills for certain things that says, this stops your migraines guaranteed. And like, 60% of them no longer have migraines. So it is like scientifically been studied as well. It's so just in case anyone ever thinks like it does sound a little woo woo, like I know I was a huge doubter. I'm like, show me the science, but the science is overwhelming. Like, man, what we say physically affects us as well. It's incredible. So just to back you up on that. But so I know the recognize, and I love this area too.
Yep.
But I know we go from recognize, and then you also said there's something about release and then refocus. So
Yes.
what would be like that next step then, now that we know our colors, green, yellow, red, etc.?
Yes. So the release part is that physical and auditory moment that you catch yourself in the yellow or the red, and you've got to snap yourself out of it. So if you're a baseball fan, or if you're into sports, baseball is the most obvious. Is they'll come up, they adjust their gloves, they adjust their helmet, they do things with their bat, they choreograph this thing that they do every time before they go in to the batter's box, and that's their release. And you'll also see some that when things don't go well, they'll do something specific. So one example is some players will put like a red dot on their hand, and they'll slap their hands together. So they know when they are fading out of that different color and they're not in the green, and they know after a mistake or something, they clap their hands together. I'm a ruminator. And again, ruminators tend to have negative loops that spin. So these aren't just for looks. I pop these. I used to start with, these are just rubber bands, the rubber bracelets. So I'll use that as a physical cue if I feel myself in that and it's starting, because it feels like a flywheel. And if I let it go too long, then it's even worse.
Bracelet to click, you'll click the bracelet to make the negative thought go away.
Yes, for
That's
sure.
awesome.
Yep. So rubber bands work. Some people, and I know that it's sometimes a nervous tick, but they'll have change in their pocket and they'll jingle those. I have a coin and a cross that I carry in my pocket. And so sometimes when things are getting bad, I'll rub them together in my pocket. So anything that's physical that you can rub or do is really, really helpful, because it's triggering more senses than just, okay, snap out of it, Forrester. It's, doing that. And that really resonates. If you're able to do something auditory in the release, that's helpful as well, because you're getting that out. It's that I don't know if you guys have ever done yoga where they just make you do those really loud exhales, and how good you feel after those. It's insane. But that's the release. You've got to let something out to then get back into what you want to do. And the refocus is simply that, is once you've recognized and you've released, now it's time to refocus. The release signal is, okay, I got to get locked in. I've got to get back into what I came here for. And that's just the loop. It's those three things. And it's got to be repeatable. So that's the hidden fourth R, is just knowing that whatever process that you have is repeatable.
I'm trying to think of, like, I wonder if I have, like you snap your bracelet. I think I'm a big breather. So if things in like my classroom or with my children are not going well, I think I'm like a very physical. I always like put my hands up and I go, oh, hold on a second. I think I'm auditory too. And I just kind of get quiet and take like a big breath. And I think my kids now know, like, that's, I think, without them realizing, like, dad's resetting and he's not comfortable right now with how things are going. But I also think my students in the classroom know that because they don't see it very often, because usually things are going pretty well. But when I get that way, I think because of our relationship, they notice that my body language, again, like you said, has changed. I'm just gonna give me a second here. And I think they feel that too. And maybe that helps them reset as well. But that's really interesting. Again, I've never thought about that I do that, but I wonder if we all have our sort of habits to get back into it. Just curious if anyone else has thought of any of their little things to refocus in that. Just curious.
I do, but I don't want to take too much airspace. So if there's somebody else, please go, just cut me off. I do breathing and I don't even realize, I didn't know why I did it, but I do it. And I teach the kids in class. I always say, breathe in for 5, hold for 5, release for 5. And after I've done that, because when I'm on the verge of a mental breakdown or behavior is abominable, terrible. Is that the abominable snowman? I don't know.
I have
When the
that.
behavior's when it's terrible in class. Oh, there, get out. Wait, put your wrist up. What do you have there?
Oh,
Put it
it's the
back up.
it's the bumble, guys. It's the bumble. You can't see it.
Oh.
Go on. All right.
I always say I have to breathe. And I literally feel my heart, it's racing out of my chest. And when I do that a couple of times, it just slows down. So it really works, but I didn't know why I was doing it.
Mm.
I do something similar, but I also have a physical anchor. Like I'm tall, so whether I'm standing or sitting, I will focus on my feet, feeling my feet, because it just changes the focus. So I'll focus on my feet, take a deep breath, and it just kind of lets go of whatever has been bothering me. So I just add that one little element. Maybe I need something extra.
Honestly, these are great. And it's whatever, like you said, is that gets you into that moment and stops everything and puts you back in control. That's all that matters. It doesn't matter if you snap your
It brings
fingers.
me back in the room, right? Like when we start getting, elevated like that in the yellow and we don't want to go to the red and we feel ourselves there, if I anchor myself somewhere physically in the room. So it's kind of like your physical thing of snapping. I just, I don't wear something around my wrist all the time. And, I don't know, it just helps for me to focus on my feet on the floor or on the ground or whatever, what that feels like to bring me back into the room, if that makes sense.
Perfect sense.
I
Yeah,
saw
I've got
in my classroom, one of my students, she kind of got hurt. She kind of cut her lip a little bit and it started to bleed. And she didn't realize it was bleeding right away until a student said, "Your lip is bleeding." And when she heard her lip was bleeding, this child, she's kindergarten, so she's 5. She would have climbed up the wall if she could have. She just lost it. She panicked. And I saw her go from 0 to 100 just like that. And just by telling her to look at me, do breathing exercises with me, like it just, I saw it just instantly, like pull her back down and rein her back in. And so those are huge things to do. But yesterday, I think, was the first time I actually really saw it with my students and how quickly they can change just by doing some simple breathing exercises.
Mm-hmm.
Paul, what were you going to say, brother?
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's funny because both of you said two things that I unintentionally combined. So I started yoga a while ago and I noticed the breathing started just, doing the routine breathing started to take hold. And I noticed that I would actually do a long, like, belly breath, like when my kids would get me. So I don't have students, but I have, adult children at work, and then I have my own children. And I've noticed, like, I'll just do that belly breath and I feel so much, you almost dispel the energy. But then I have a routine of making tea every night, and I was starting an awareness practice, a physical awareness practice, and I I noticed, I was like, all right, feel my feet, take a deep breath. I have this huge, just like release of, the pent up energy throughout the day. So I started using that once I noticed it, through various situations, because, in a lot of situations, you can't do much that's overt, right? You have people in front of you, you have kids in front of you, you want to trigger them, because if you're the leader in the room, right? So it's really important to have that less obvious thing. So I press my toes to the ground, notice my feet, and take that huge belly breath, and that release is often enough to get myself focused back into the present and get out of the mind. It's that physical sense, I think, just pulls you out.
Jeff, thinking about all this, I have another R that I'm thinking about as a parent, and this comes from guilt. But I'll like recognize, release, refocus, and then later I have to repair. If I blow up on my kids or I lean in too hard, and that's usually based out of fear. Usually I fear they become something that I strongly dislike, I see in my classroom, and I overreact to that. And then I have to like figure out once I'm back to green, like when is the appropriate time and the right time to repair or discuss that with my kids, that like, hey, I did this because of this, but I also went a little too far, and then they get in the whole like you feel shame and you're embarrassed and you want to be the parent, but you also want to teach them that you make mistakes. But anyways, I got an R that's usually 24 hours later, like, hey, remember when that went really bad yesterday? Let's talk about that really quick. But I just think funny. I'm throwing in that R 24 hours later because I overreacted.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I'm glad everybody brought up the breath work, because that was something I was going to mention at the end, is that is so critical of box breathing. The fives is an important one. That's one that Brian teaches. He also does 6-2-8. So you inhale for 6, hold for 2, and exhale for 8. So that's another one that he does. Any of those things, and even like what Paul had said, is that you can do that subtly, that's for you, that you might not be able to do your full blown ritual, your release ritual, but what are those little things that you can do? Could it be snap your fingers? Could it be, Trish, wiggle your toes instead of doing a whole, foot thing, or just press your toes, like Paul had said, into the ground. So it's coming up with those. And Bill, the hope is that through recognizing green, yellow, red, is that you'll stay in the green and yellow a lot more than you'll get to the red, and hopefully minimize having to use that other R that is important as well. And that's the hope, that through just us talking about this, it brings awareness that each of you have noticed it within yourselves, that you already do a lot of these things, and young people will realize that they do some of those without knowing. They probably don't do breath work. They probably exhale. That might just be something that they do. But when you bring awareness to young people, just think of how important it is to equip them at an early age to manage stress and anxiety, because we've had to figure it out. And I'm 51, and I wish I would have known some of these things just 30 years ago, not even 45 years ago. And so that's what's the beauty of it, especially with where you're at. And then Paul, knowing that you have adult children, is just think about if you're able to manage your stress and anxiety and can pass these things on to them, it's such a valuable tool that will then start to change, because it's like, okay, was that a green light behavior or was that more of a yellow? And when Brian was talking about this, he realized through his whole college baseball career, he was in the yellow his whole career. He's like, I never felt, after I looked at it, I was never in the green. So he was always teetering, not at his best, but he could go red at any moment because he was so far from the green. And some of us are like that. We have weeks that we're in the yellow, and you may wake up in the yellow, and it goes back to, how do you fake it? How do you have those morning affirmations to say, I'm going to have a good day? And then setting out on that and just keep telling yourself, I'm going to have a good day.
Well, Jeff, as far as time is concerned, I just wanted to, because I know some people may need to leave, and by all means, everyone, no judgment if you have to sign off. Totally okay with that, and understood. We all have a lot going on. But Jeff, first of all, I just want to say thank you for jumping on and bringing this up. I think, as always, when we do things like this, it ends up making more questions in my brain, right, than the answers, but in a beautiful way. And I love that. And all that you do and to pour into people, I appreciate. If anyone needs to go, it's totally understood. Jeff, if you don't mind, I'm going to hit the unrecord, but then I had a quick question for you in case anyone wanted to stick around. But Jeff, officially, thank you so much for coming on, brother.